Imagine waking up because your feet are cold. Not just cold, wet. You don't understand why at first. A few moments ago, you were dreaming beside a warm fire. The crackling flames had filled the night with light. Your family was sleeping nearby. The smell of roasted meat still lingered in the air. Now everything is different. The fire is gone. The ground beneath you feels soft. Something bumps into your leg. It isn't a log. It's one of your own spears, floating through the camp. Before your eyes can adjust to the darkness, someone shouts. Another voice answers from somewhere you can't see. Children begin crying. Water is everywhere. Think about that for a second. For almost all of human history, people didn't sleep inside brick houses. They didn't have weather forecasts. They didn't build concrete walls to stop rivers. Their homes were temporary. Their possessions were few. Their safety depended entirely on reading nature correctly. And sometimes, nature changed its mind overnight. So what actually happened when an ancient camp flooded while everyone was asleep? Did people simply grab their belongings and move somewhere else? Did floods wipe out entire communities? Or did these terrifying nights quietly change the course of human history? The answer is far stranger than most people realize. Because floods didn't just threaten survival. They changed the way humans thought. To understand why, we need to travel back tens of thousands of years. Forget cities. Forget roads. Forget farms. Imagine standing in a world where almost everything is wild. Dense forests stretch across the horizon. Rivers twist through valleys without dams or bridges. Animals move freely across enormous landscapes. Every sound means something. Every smell carries information. Every decision could mean the difference between finding food or becoming food. This was home. Hunter-gatherers didn't own houses in the way we think about them today. They built shelters using branches, leaves, grass, and animal hides. Some camps lasted only a few days. Others stayed in the same place for weeks, sometimes longer if food remained plentiful. Everything they owned had to be carried. Stone tools, animal skins, spears, fire. Yes, even fire. If a group moved camp, they carried glowing embers whenever possible, because creating a new fire wasn't as easy as striking a match. That little bundle of glowing wood represented warmth, cooked food, protection, and comfort. Losing it could become a serious problem. Now imagine several days of heavy rain. At first, life continues. People still gather plants. Hunters still search for animals. Children still play. The rain is annoying, but manageable. The nearby stream rises slightly. Nobody panics. After all, rivers rise all the time. Then another day passes. The rain doesn't stop. Small puddles appear around camp. The ground begins swallowing footprints. Wood refuses to stay dry. The fire becomes harder to keep alive. Smoke hangs low in the damp air. Everything smells like wet earth. Still, nobody knows exactly what's coming. Here's where things get interesting. Modern people often imagine ancient humans as being unprepared for nature. But evidence suggests the opposite. Hunter-gatherers were extraordinary observers. They noticed changes in bird behavior. They understood animal migration. They recognized edible plants in different seasons. They remembered where water collected after storms. Their survival depended on paying attention. But even the best observers couldn't control everything. Sometimes storms arrived that nobody expected. Sometimes rivers rose faster than anyone had ever seen. And sometimes the safest campsite suddenly became the most dangerous place in the landscape. Imagine sleeping beside a peaceful river. You chose this place because animals visit it. Fresh water is only a short walk away. Fishing is easy. The ground seemed dry when you arrived. It looked perfect. But several kilometers upstream, rain has been falling even harder. You can't see it. You can't hear it. You have no idea that thousands of liters of water are already racing toward your camp. That's the frightening thing about floods. The danger often begins somewhere else. Hours later, while everyone sleeps, the river quietly climbs over its banks. Water enters the camp slowly, then faster. The fire hisses and dies. Food stored on the ground begins drifting away. Animal skins soak through. Stone tools disappear beneath muddy water. People wake in complete confusion. It's dark, cold, noisy. Nobody can immediately tell where the safest direction is. That confusion may have been one of the greatest dangers. Panic makes every decision harder. Should you save your child first? Of course. Should you grab your tools? Without them, hunting becomes much more difficult. Should you rescue the burning embers before they're washed away? Without fire, the next few days become even more dangerous. There isn't enough time to save everything. Every choice means losing something else. Think about that for a second. Nature wasn't simply testing strength. It was forcing impossible decisions. One reason archaeologists know floods affected prehistoric life is because of where ancient camps are found. Many early camps sit close to rivers, lakes, or seasonal streams. That makes perfect sense. Water attracted animals. Animals attracted hunters. Fish provided reliable food. Plants grew more easily near rivers. Fresh drinking water was always nearby. Living close to water increased the chances of survival. Until it didn't. The very thing that kept people alive could suddenly threaten their lives. It was a constant gamble. Move farther away, and finding water became harder. Stay close, and one powerful storm could destroy everything. There was no perfect answer. Only careful judgment. And that judgment became one of humanity's greatest survival skills. But here's where things get weird. Floods rarely leave behind dramatic archaeological evidence. You might expect researchers to uncover ancient camps frozen in time beneath layers of mud. Instead, they usually find scattered clues. A piece of charcoal buried beneath river sediment. A cluster of stone tools lying where they shouldn't be. Animal bones mixed into flood deposits. Tiny grains of pollen trapped beneath layers of silt. Individually, these discoveries seem ordinary. Together, they reveal a much bigger story. A story about people who kept rebuilding. People who refused to let nature have the final word. And that raises an even bigger question. If floods happened again and again, why did ancient humans continue living near rivers at all? The answer begins with something that completely changed the future of our species. The answer begins with something almost every living creature needs: water. Without it, no camp could survive for long. Rivers gave ancient humans nearly everything they needed. Fish swam through them. Herds of deer, horses, and wild cattle came to drink from them. Edible plants grew along their banks. Even the trees near rivers provided better wood for tools and shelters. A river wasn't just a source of water. It was the center of life. Leaving it completely would have been like moving into the middle of a desert. So prehistoric people accepted the risk. They knew floods would come. They just hoped the next one wouldn't come tonight. Think about that for a second. Every evening, they were making a gamble without even realizing it. And sometimes, they lost. But then something strange happens. Instead of giving up on rivers, humans became better at reading them. Modern archaeologists believe hunter-gatherers developed an incredible understanding of landscapes. They noticed subtle details that most of us would ignore today. How high were old branches bent by previous floods? Where did driftwood collect? Which patches of grass looked healthier? Which riverbanks were made of solid ground? And which ones were soft mud waiting to collapse? Every clue mattered. The landscape was constantly talking. You simply had to learn its language. Experienced hunters probably became experienced weather readers as well. Older members of the group likely remembered which places flooded during certain seasons. Imagine a young hunter suggesting a campsite near the water. Then an elder quietly shakes their head. Not here. No explanation. Just experience. Perhaps 20 years earlier, the same place had disappeared beneath rushing water. Nobody wrote maps. Nobody drew warning signs. Memory became the map. Stories became survival manuals. The oldest people in the group carried something more valuable than weapons. They carried knowledge. Lose that knowledge, and the next generation might repeat the same deadly mistake. Here's something fascinating. Some anthropologists think storytelling itself may have become more important because of disasters like floods. Imagine sitting around a fire after surviving one. Children ask what happened. Adults explain why the camp was in danger. They tell everyone never to camp below a certain hill. Never ignore dark clouds coming from the mountains. Never leave all the food on the ground. Those stories weren't just entertainment. They were instructions hidden inside memories. Thousands of years before books existed, stories were libraries. And every flood added another chapter. Of course, floods didn't only threaten shelters. They threatened food. Imagine spending days hunting a large animal. The meat has finally been cut into strips and placed near the fire to dry. That food might feed your group for days. Then heavy rain arrives. The drying meat becomes wet. The fire struggles to stay alive. Soon the meat begins to spoil. Everything changes. Suddenly, people who thought they had enough food must hunt again. Except hunting after heavy rain isn't easy. Animal tracks disappear into mud. Scents wash away. Open fields become slippery. Even throwing a spear becomes more difficult when the ground keeps stealing your balance. Nature had changed the rules overnight, and humans had to learn the new game immediately. Here's where archaeology gives us another clue. Scientists have found evidence that many prehistoric groups moved seasonally instead of staying in one place all year. Part of the reason was food, part of it was climate, and part of it may have been flooding. Rather than fighting rivers during dangerous seasons, some groups simply left. Months later, they returned when conditions improved. It was a surprisingly smart strategy. Why argue with nature when you can simply wait? Sometimes the greatest survival skill isn't strength, it's timing. Think about that for a second. Today we admire people who never quit. But ancient humans also knew when to leave. Knowing when not to fight may have saved countless lives. Now let's talk about something people rarely consider: sleep. Floods almost always became more dangerous because humans were asleep when they happened. During the day, rising water is easier to notice. At night, everything changes. Darkness hides movement. Sounds become confusing. Rain masks the noise of approaching water. Even a fast-moving river can seem strangely quiet until it's almost beside you. Imagine waking from deep sleep into complete chaos. Your heart races before your mind understands why. Psychologists call this the startle response. It's built into us. Our brains react first. They think later. That response probably saved many ancient lives. The people who woke quickly had a better chance of escaping. But it also created confusion. Everyone is shouting. Everyone is moving. Nobody has the full picture. Should you run uphill? Should you search for missing family members? Should you rescue supplies? Every second matters. No wonder floods appear in myths from cultures all around the world. They were unforgettable. Even people who survived carried those memories forever. Here's where things get even more interesting. Some researchers believe repeated environmental disasters encouraged stronger cooperation between humans. Imagine rebuilding a flooded camp alone. You'd spend hours collecting wood, finding food, starting a new fire, repairing shelter, watching for predators, protecting children. It's almost impossible. Now imagine 20 people working together. One gathers branches. Another searches for dry wood. Someone else catches fish. Others comfort frightened children. The work becomes manageable. Disasters rewarded cooperation. Groups that worked together recovered faster. Groups that argued too much may not have recovered at all. That simple idea may have shaped human evolution more than we realize. Humans often celebrate intelligence, or strength, or courage. But perhaps our greatest advantage was something much simpler: helping each other after everything went wrong. And floods provided plenty of opportunities to practice. But then something unexpected happens. The floodwaters finally disappear. The danger seems over. Except, it isn't. Because the world left behind looks completely different. Trees lie across the ground. Fresh mud covers old paths. Streams flow in new directions. Animals change their routes. Even familiar landmarks can disappear. Imagine walking through a place you've known for months, only to realize you barely recognize it anymore. The flood didn't just wash away the camp. It erased certainty. Ancient humans now faced another challenge. Should they rebuild, or should they leave forever? That decision may have influenced thousands of generations, because sometimes staying meant risking another flood. But leaving meant abandoning a place rich with food and water. There was no obvious answer. Only experience, only instinct, only hope. And those difficult choices slowly taught humans something remarkable. Nature could never be controlled, but it could be understood. Little by little, season by season, generation after generation. That lesson would eventually become one of the most important discoveries in human history. Because thousands of years later, people stopped asking how to escape floods and started asking whether they could predict them. Now imagine what happens after all of that. The water is gone. The flood has ended. The camp is silent again. But something feels wrong. Nothing is where it used to be. Paths are erased. The fire pit is gone. Even the ground itself has changed shape, as if the land has forgotten what it looked like before. Think about that for a second. For ancient humans, this might have been the most unsettling part of all. Not the flood itself, but what comes after. Because survival doesn't end when the danger stops. It begins again the moment you realize everything is different. And here's where things get weird. Some archaeologists believe that this post-flood confusion may have been just as important as the flood itself in shaping human behavior. Why? Because after repeated disasters, humans stopped thinking of land as permanent. Instead, they started thinking of it as something that changes, moves, remakes itself. This sounds obvious today. But for early humans, it was a huge mental shift. The ground was no longer stable. Even rivers had moods, and memory became unreliable. Imagine trying to return to a hunting spot, only to find a lake where trees used to be. Or following an old path that now leads into a swamp. Even the landscape was gaslighting you. Now let's go deeper. Archaeologists studying ancient floodplains have found something fascinating. In many regions, after major flooding periods, there is a sudden increase in temporary camps rather than long-term settlements. Short stays, frequent movement, constant adjustment. Why would that happen? One theory is simple. Trust in location was broken. If a place could disappear overnight, why stay too long? So humans adapted again. They became more mobile, more flexible, more aware of environmental signals. But then something even more important begins to happen. Some groups stop seeing floods as pure destruction and start seeing them as cycles. Danger comes, then renewal, then abundance, then danger again. Think about that cycle. It's not random chaos. It's rhythm. And humans are extremely good at learning rhythm. Even today, we notice seasons. We expect weather changes. We prepare for patterns. That ability may have been sharpened by thousands of years of living with unpredictable rivers. Now here's a surprising fact. Some of the earliest evidence of agriculture appears near floodplains. Not far from them. Near them. That sounds strange at first. Why would anyone choose the most dangerous land to grow food? But floodplains do something incredible. They renew soil naturally. Every flood leaves behind fresh nutrients. Rich silt. Perfect for plants. So over time, humans discovered something important. The same water that destroyed their camps also made the land fertile. That contradiction changed everything. Because now floods weren't just disasters. They were also opportunities. This may be one of the earliest examples of humans learning to cooperate with nature instead of only resisting it. Eventually, this idea grows. Small seasonal camps near rivers begin to transform. People start returning to the same locations. They begin shaping the land, clearing areas, protecting crops, guiding water, not controlling nature completely, but influencing it. And this slow transformation leads to something enormous. Permanent settlements, cities built beside rivers, civilizations rising from floodplains, the Nile, the Indus, the Tigris and Euphrates, the Yellow River. All of them share the same strange pattern. They flood. They destroy. They rebuild. Over and over again. And humans stay. Why? Because the benefits outweigh the risks. Even today, most major cities in history were built near water. The same ancient gamble continues, just on a much larger scale. Now let's pause for a moment, because there's a deeper psychological layer here. Imagine generations growing up with stories of floods. Grandparents telling children about camps that disappeared overnight. Parents teaching where not to sleep. Warnings passed down again and again. Over time, this creates something powerful. A cultural memory of instability. A quiet understanding that nothing is guaranteed. Some researchers believe this may have shaped human thinking in subtle ways. Why we plan ahead. Why we store food. Why we build shelters. Why we feel uneasy during heavy rain even today. It's not just imagination. It may be inherited caution. A memory written into culture. Now think about modern life for a second. We live in houses that don't move. We control water with pipes and dams. We check weather apps before stepping outside. Floods still happen, but they feel distant, managed, predictable. But for most of human history, it wasn't like that at all. Every storm carried uncertainty. Every river could become an enemy. Every night had a question hidden inside it. Will we wake up dry? Or will everything be gone? And yet humans kept going. They rebuilt camps after disasters. They learned new patterns. They adapted faster than the environment could surprise them. And slowly, something remarkable emerged. Resilience wasn't just survival. It became identity. Because the groups that survived weren't the strongest, or the fastest, or the biggest. They were the ones who could lose everything, and still try again the next day. Think about that. That might be the real origin of human progress. Not comfort, not stability, but repeated loss followed by rebuilding. So what actually happened when ancient camps flooded overnight? They were destroyed. Yes, but they were also transformed. Floods forced humans to move, to think, to cooperate, to remember, to adapt, and eventually, to build entire civilizations around the very thing that once threatened them. So the next time you hear rain hitting your window, remember this. For our ancestors, that sound wasn't background noise. It was uncertainty. It was danger. It was change. And somehow, through thousands of nights just like that, humans didn't just survive the flood. They learned how to live with it.